Here. I'm Terry Bruner. I'm the director of the Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency, also the acting director at the Economic Development Department. And I wanted to welcome you to our MRA Toolkit for Developers call today. It's being recorded, just so you know. We're really excited to talk to all of you about the things that we're doing at the Metropolitan Redevelopment area. I've been here about 4 months, but I know consistently when I go out and talk to people about the MRA, they kind of wonder what it does or they wonder what it can do. And that's the intent of today's call, is to make you all aware of that. So I'm going to hand it over to the capable hands of Karen Iverson to kick it off and get you all started. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Terry. Yes, so I'm going to share my screen. Welcome, everybody. We are really pleased to see a lot of interest in this webinar. We really wanted to just take the opportunity to explain more in depth our programs to folks who might be interested in using them, and really give you the nuts and bolts of how to access our programs. We've recently released a number of new initiatives, so we're really excited. So our agenda today is at the top. We're really excited to have Todd Clark with us from New Mexico Apartment Advisors. He's one of our best champions here for Albuquerque and for development here in Albuquerque, and one of the smartest folks that I know, and a fellow ULI board member. So he's going to give us a really brief overview of that. Then I'm going to go over the incentive programs that we have at the MRA, really just going step by step through them. And then finally, but most importantly, we have Dean Kettle with the planning department, the assistant building safety manager, and he's going to go over some tips on how to go through the building permitting and plan review process. So, Sarah, do you want to start off? We'd like to just do a poll. Sarah, do you want to put that up there? So if you have, if you could indicate which one of these categories you are in, that would be really helpful. May not be exhaustive. If you go down to the bottom, if you slide down, there's also a other category if you don't feel like that represents you. Okay, I think we may have topped out there on our answers. Give you 5 more seconds to click on who it is that you are representing. End it there. I don't know if you can see the share. Can you guys see the shared results?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got a good group of folks, of developers within the city, a new group of folks and developers outside of the city, a few contractors, and a lot of folks from other New Mexico communities. I saw that. I think there's some interest in understanding how we run our programs here so that they can be replicated in other cities. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much. And we're excited to have you all here. And I'll turn it over to Todd.
Karen, thank you, and Terry and everybody at the City of Albuquerque's Metropolitan Redevelopment Authority for putting together this program and getting such a great turnout. First of all, let me apologize. Like many of you, I'm suffering from whatever's going around the last couple of weeks, and my voice kind of comes and goes. If you don't know me, I'm the 4th generation of my family to practice commercial real estate And my wife and I own a commercial real estate brokerage company that specializes in apartment investment sales. I love our community. I love housing in our community, and I love talking about it. So I was really excited the opportunity to get to share all of the information I had. And when I told Karen, I've got a video put together and I can do this in about 90 minutes, she said, well, guess again, you get 9. So I'm going to give you a very brief, kind of high level overview of what we're seeing in the Albuquerque market today. And unfortunately, it's very much in a crisis, in that we're significantly underserved based on all of the new jobs that are coming in the marketplace. This is a historical trend that shows you kind of population growth in the city. And we are in the last 100 years in our 5th housing crisis. And the first one really started when the railroad came to town over 100 years ago. That carried through the tuberculosis days, when New Mexico became kind of a health center for the planet, and that carried through in World War II, when people returned back from World War II and realized what a lovely place Albuquerque was to live in. And of course, it helped that we had 2 of the country's 3 nuclear laboratories here, and more PhDs than any per capita than anywhere else in the country, which led to our strong military presence and a lot of the real estate development that my family got to experience during that time. You can see here, this is a Chamber of Commerce letter. I like to collect old New Mexico memorabilia, and it talks about in 1945 how dire the housing situation was back then. And they were really not very optimistic on it. But we know since then our city has really grown by leaps and bounds. And one of those growth waves happened in the 70s and 80s. And we had a housing crisis then. And at the time, the city responded to it by doing high density zoning in the Low Mesa and Trumbull neighborhoods. And we've seen different ways that we try to accommodate for all of these. And the 4th housing shortage came during the Intel expansion days. And at the time, the largest single family affordable housing developer in the state was AMREP, who owned most of the land in Rio Rancho. And up until Intel came in, they didn't have a house that cost, a brand new house that cost more than $100,000. And by the time the Intel expansion was done, they didn't have a new house that cost less than $150,000. And that takes us today to where we are, which is our 5th housing shortage. And a lot of this was happening during the pandemic, but it wasn't making the kind of headlines I think it normally would have. One of my favorite trade publications, The Economist, was actually covering New Mexico and Albuquerque, much to my excitement. And if you were a tech stock investor interested in FANG, that's Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google, well, we had half of those folks here in our marketplace doing major expansions and adding lots of new jobs. And we had our homegrown companies like Intel as well. Facebook is now into, as I understand it, phase 3 of a 6-phase development, a 10-year construction project, and lots of expansion going on there. Probably the worst kept secret during the pandemic was the Amazon announcement on the west side. And we now know that's turned into 4 different facilities, 2 out on the west side, 1 at the aviation park, and 1 down in Las Lunas near the rail park. And if I look at all of those jobs and I add them together, as you see here, these are all the ones that have been publicly announced. They've been vetted by the media or local politicians. And you can see they total about 9,659 jobs total. We've taken economic base analysis to those jobs and disaggregated them into 2 categories, basic and non-basic. If you're not an economist, don't worry about it. Just know that basic jobs export a product, good, or service, and they import wealth back to your community. And they have a multiplier effect. Those jobs create other jobs. The people in bunny suits out at Intel are going to create more chips than the Mexicans can consume. And so that's a basic industry. Those construction jobs at Intel, not so much. Those are taking care of kind of the local economy. And the punchline of all that is if I take that multiplier and I apply it to those basic jobs, then we're going to see increasing employment to the tune of about 54,681, plus the 2,834 non-basic jobs means our total employment is likely to increase to 57,515. And as those new people move into our community, they bring their families with them. There's a population to employment ratio for those families as they come in. You know, for every person who has a job, there's somebody who comes with them, part of their support network, whether it's a spouse or grandparents or kids or whatever. Anyway, that's going to increase our population by 124,808. And if I divide that by 2.5 persons per household, that means we need almost 50,000 new housing units. And 65% of those people choose to own. So we're going to need about 32,000 new housing units for sale. And in the space of what I work in every day, day in, day out, we're going to need 17,334 new apartment units. Now, that's if we wanted 100% occupancy, and we really don't want that in the marketplace. We want a good, reasonable vacancy so that people have time to move from one unit to another, that we don't see outrageous rent increases. And so most markets, we try to build to a natural vacancy of 5%. And if we wanted to do that, this community needs 18,247 units. And if I deduct from that the 1,979 units that have been in the planning stages or working their way coming out of the ground, then our gap today is 16,268 units of multifamily rental. Now, you probably are scratching your head saying, wait a minute, I know there's a problem out there, but I'm not seeing that many people. Well, just know a couple of things. One of them is these jobs are coming in phases over the next couple, 3 years. And the next one is that when we can't cure this, we see, if you map out demand and supply, we see a constant steady increase in the rent levels. And when we first started doing this forecast in the community back in April of 2021, we were guessing it might be a 15% increase. It actually turned out to be closer to an 18.5% rental increase for those who rent across the entire gamut. If you are a lifestyle resident, you're somebody who's chosen to live in rental, either because you're going to be in our community for a couple of years or whatever the reason is, those folks are seeing a 24% rent increase. Unfortunately, that's very painful. But fortunately for the community, we are the 7th most affordable rental city in the country. So even though that, rent growth is not going to be sustainable based on what we're seeing for income growth, there is still room for that to get to move in the next couple of years. But the best situation we could end up in is to be in one where we have a lot more supply of housing than we have demand for housing. And today, of course, we have that entirely the other way around. I will tell you, a lot of those jobs that I've shared with you, as I mentioned, were announced in the media or announced by our local politicians, but there are a lot of other jobs out there that most of us are tracking that I think will make this housing situation even worse because they've not been entirely announced at all. The Albuquerque Journal was kind enough about a week ago to do an editorial on this housing crisis, and they also arrived at the same conclusion, which is that we can only solve this problem by having more supply than we have demand, which is why I'm so honored and excited to get to be your kickoff speaker today for the City of Albuquerque's Metropolitan Redevelopment Authority's plan to bring in more folks and to get more housing unit up and going. And with that, I think I've nailed easily 10 minutes, Karen, and I'll just stand for any questions if you guys have time. I see a couple of questions from Frederick. Thank you. First one is average rental rates in Albuquerque. Frederick, right now, I don't have that number right in front of me, but I'll tell you, I just finished a rent survey on new construction, and we're seeing new construction communities exceed $2 a square foot. That has been a magic number to me in the 33 years I've been in the housing industry. And I say that because if you take the rental rate and multiply it times 100, on average, as a rule of thumb, that's what a developer can afford in construction costs. And when you can get to $200 a square foot in construction costs, now you can suddenly afford steel. And when you can afford steel, you can escape the trap of 4-story stick-based housing. So new rental rates we're seeing at $2 to $2 a foot, $2.50 a square foot. And what's the average new housing cost in Albuquerque? Frederick, I work for a lot of developers, and I'm seeing that all over the board. I've seen developers who are able to bring product online for $125,000, $135,000, $150,000 a square foot. And I'm seeing developers on the other end bringing product online closer to $225,000 to $250,000. A lot of it has to do with the kind of building type they have, their overall land costs, and what amenity package that they're putting in. Peter Generis, good to see you, man. What do you think we need the most of? Studios and 3 bedrooms? Absolutely, Peter. You know, my belief is in the 80s, when we had a downturn and too much housing being built, that the lenders for decades after that encouraged the marketplace to build 2 bedrooms. And I think it was unfortunate that we built as many 2 bedrooms. And I say that because I can see studio rents today at like $1.85, and I can see 1 bedroom rents at like $1.75. 2 bedroom rents will drop to, you know, closer to $1.25, and then 3 bedroom rents will pick right back up. So 2 bedrooms, for the most part, mostly compete like gas stations on 3 or 4 corners of an intersection, just based on price. We know that, for example, the apartment association, before they stopped doing their rent survey a couple of years ago, the last one they did, downtown Albuquerque apartment rents, 1 bedroom units, not only did they get more per square foot, they got more per month than 2 bedroom units. It had me scratching my head about millennials and Gen Z. Why didn't you just rent that extra bedroom and turn it into a bonus yoga room or a Zoom office or a, you know, bicycle shop or whatever? But they weren't. The real demand and where the marketplace of the lifestyle consumer for this product is in those really smaller units. And they're looking for places that fall very much in alignment with our MRA districts, in that they have high walk, bike, and transit scores. Okay. Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. Thank you for that. He's added some notes here about 85% of new housing be occupied by singles and couples. If you go to our website, we've got 30 years of research. It's nmapartment.com. It's on the screen here. And Kevin, I did just post up there this week NAR's Buyers and Sellers Guide survey that they did from 2022. And we're seeing the rise of the other household, the demographic household that's not being described in typical normal fashions. And I think that very much falls in line with that. Any other questions?
Todd, thank you very much. I think that, you know, I'm so excited to have so many people on this call who will help us solve that problem. And at the end of this presentation, which will be posted, we do have Todd's contact information, if any of you would like to follow up with him. So I'm going to share my screen now and go into the Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency and the programs that we have. So, you know, a lot of folks actually have not really heard of us. While we call ourselves an agency, we are a department of the city, and it is our job to partner with the private sector. We don't build public housing. It is our task to try to incentivize and partner in parts of town that are struggling, that aren't seeing the type of economic investment, especially in areas where we know we can accommodate a lot of density and a lot of housing. So that is our mission, is to work with you all and to help you build a vibrant downtown and sort of inner city for Albuquerque. So to start off, you have to be in a metropolitan area with an approved plan in order to access our incentives. And so on our website, there is a map, and we've got about 20 different areas. This is the greater downtown area down here. We pretty much have all of the greater downtown area with the exception of areas that are considered historic. And then we also have the 2 historic Route 66 routes through the city. This is the current one right now, Central Avenue. We have it all the way through the city, is in some type of redevelopment area. And then actually before that, 4th Street was the Route 66 Avenue. So we've got that access going through. We actually are just finishing a plan for the university area. I'm really happy with the plan and the information that it provides. And that sort of fills in this hole right here, leaving the only remaining hole that we don't have along the Central Avenue to be Nob Hill. So this is the first thing you need to do, is be in a metropolitan redevelopment area. And these are areas where we want to see infill, we want to see density, and we want to see you working on projects. You need you would be hard pressed to find a project within those areas that either hasn't been assisted with affordable housing type subsidies or with MRA subsidies. You know, our projects span the, you know, landmark Old Albuquerque High redevelopment project. We've done hotel. We recently were a partner for the Spring Hill Suites project across the street from Presbyterian. Most recently, we've gotten more into direct business aid and services. We provided an outdoor dining grant during COVID, as well as recently launched a storefront grant program. And over the past 22 years, we've seen over $600 million invested in Albuquerque through our programs. So I'm going to go through them one by one. And I'm going to kind of stop and pause and see if there's any questions as we go through each program. I can also take questions at the end. So if you don't have your question thought of at the moment, don't worry, there'll be another chance at the end. So the first incentive program we have is an impact fee waiver. And this applies to any project in a metropolitan redevelopment area. It's automatic. So when you go through your building permit process and they assess your fees, this should be taken into consideration when they give you that fee bill. And they waive the parks, streets, open space, trails, police, fire, and drainage impact fees. So if you've got a lot of impervious area, which a lot of MRA projects do, that can actually be quite significant. It does not waive the sewer and water or the building plan review or building permit fees. And we've seen the approximate value of this to be about $1,500 per multifamily unit. So that is a policy that the city council passed and is just sort of at the counter. So if I'm just going to kind of slow down to see if there's any questions on that. Okay, going on to the next one. So we also have a brownfield remediation loan, and this is a revolving loan that we received from the EPA some time ago. We granted it out to some initial projects, or we loaned it out to some initial projects. Old Albuquerque High and the Bell Trading Post were a few of them. We've recently received a lot of those repayments, and now we have about $450,000 available. We can lend it out at least a 2% interest rate, and we would probably stay pretty close to that number. The repayment terms can be flexible, so we can defer or do interest only. And we can negotiate that depending on the impact of your project and the location of it, its ability to sort of be catalytic. But we do have to get the repayment within 10 years. You do have to have a phase one that has been completed within 180 days. And you also had to have a phase one done before you took ownership. The project you need to be proposing an end use for the project. So we can't just loan the money because you're going to kind of clean it up and stabilize it and then maybe put it on the market. You sort of have to have the whole end use figured out, and that's what we would be underwriting based on. And you do have to have site control, whether that be through a deed, a lease, or an option. The types of we can remediate any hazardous substance that's on the CERCLA list of hazardous substances. The most common ones we see are lead-based paint and pigeon poo, and of course, petroleum products. So that is our brownfield remediation loan program. The next program that we have is the redevelopment tax abatement. And this is a new program for us. We've sort of recently really scoured it to try to make it easier, simplified for people. Our goal was to make this accessible to smaller projects and reducing the fees and the logistics that went into getting it. I won't even bother describing what it was before. I'll just describe the new process and the new criteria for getting it. We've already seen what we saw what our initial goal was of making it accessible to smaller developers. We've had both Mark Baker come in for this project, and then we also had a project up in the Nob Hill area that have both received this tax abatement. What we can do through this program is we can abate all of the incremental property taxes for 7 years, and we abate all of the jurisdictions. You do have to pay the taxes before your pre-development taxes still need to be paid as a payment in lieu. One thing that sort of causes people a little bit of stress is that the city does have to take ownership of the property, and then we lease it back to the developer or the owner. And that is by state statute. That was one complication that we weren't able to ease. But I can tell you that we have worked with small developers, we've worked with very large developers, and we are able to work through any concerns that the lender has. The lease is written very favorably to give all of the rights of the project other than ownership to the developer, and it has worked. So we can work through that. And what we've seen the approximate value of this to be, of course, it depends a lot, is about $8,000 to $11,000 per unit is sort of the ballpark that we've seen it be able to shave off if you were to net present value all of that savings over those 7 years. So in order to get a redevelopment tax abatement, obviously you have to be located in one of those metropolitan redevelopment areas. Again, you have to have site control. You have to have a deed, a lease, or an option, and that option needs to be good for at least 4 months. So we want to have time to be able to go through our process without you, having that trigger date. The project has to have a minimum size. You have to meet one of these. Either the construction cost is $2 million, you're doing at least 8 units of new housing, or 15,000 square feet of commercial space. You also have to have a minimum community benefit score of 100, and I'm going to come back to this and show you that in a little bit more detail. So those are things that these are all pretty like objective things that you should be able to look at and say yes or no. Over here, we've got sort of the evaluation criteria. So these are things you need to make your case on and are decided whether or not you've met them. They're decided by the city council and the Albuquerque Development Commission as it goes through the approval process. So you have to meet redevelopment goals. So first and foremost is that you're eliminating blighted conditions. You need to meet the goals of the MRA plan. Most of those plans, not all of them, but most of them have some, very broad brush language about wanting to encourage more multi-use family or mixed use development, compact development. But some of them get a little bit more nuanced. So you really need to open up that MRA plan and find the policy language that would justify your project. You need to be avoiding demolition of viable buildings and avoiding the relocation of businesses. And this is sort of like a past one and a forward-looking one. So we would be looking at, had you acquired the property and demolished a viable building prior to application, as well as looking into the future. And we do have some design criteria that the building needs to be aesthetically pleasing. It needs to have variation in color and texture and scale. We do have some very specific language in the application about having variation in the elevation at least every 100 feet. And then you have to have experience with similar projects. I'm going to pause here because I see some questions coming in. Can the developer reacquire the property after 7 years? Yes. So it automatically, after those 7 years, the city would give a deed back to the property owner, and then the property gets back on the tax rolls. The reason for that whole mechanism is that is the mechanism that allows it to be considered public property and therefore exempt from being in the taxable base. Okay, so I'm gonna switch my screen that I'm showing right now and show you the show you the, can you see, do you see my website here? No, okay.
No, I still see your presentation.
Okay. Uh-oh.
There we go.
Hello.
Okay, you there, Karen?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We
I
lost
think
you for a second.
it said that Zoom quit unexpectedly. All right. Okay, I'm back. I'm back in Zoom land. Okay. So can you see the website here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so if you go over here to development incentives, this is where we have all of the information on the various programs. So like I said, you have to have a score of 100 on the community benefit matrix. And that can be downloaded here. And the point of this matrix was really to provide a floor for development. We really believe that the elements in this community benefit matrix really represent almost best practices. They're things that you would need to have your project be marketable in today's market, and it's pretty achievable. So we have a variety of things that cover sustainability, economic impact, and community benefits. The projects, or the more specifically, you've got things like reusing existing structures. You can see that if you've got 30 points right there if you're reusing an existing building. EV charging stations, on-site solar, various net zero and water energy approaches, having encouraging alternative transportation by not over parking it or having ride share loading space or bike storage. Those things to get you some points, as well as having efficient use methods. So, obviously having a smaller footprint is a good sustainability practice. This is something we saw with the downtown J-Red project. He received points in that category. I think this is also sort of a debate whether or not cost affordability tool or not.
Karen, just to jump in, your audio is echoing.
Am I on here twice?
It's possible. I don't see you on here twice, though.
How about now?
Still echoey.
See me on there twice?
No. You want to try just jumping off and back on really quickly?
You're so smart. Yes.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. We'll get this sorted.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
You sound hesitant.
Say something more. Let me see if there's an echo still.
Building in downtown Albuquerque is amazing.
This is better. Okay, go ahead.
All right, Dean shook his head. But I'm gonna go with you and not take consensus on it. Okay. Okay, so we're back to this scorecard. Okay, so we have a variety of things that you can get your points on. Some things that I want to point out is that projects that have a lower total cost get higher points in one category. Our point there was to try to even the playing field, so smaller projects would not necessarily have the same requirements to add things such as sustainability or community benefit features. So we give smaller projects a little bit of a compensation in that regard. And then we have points for historic preservation or providing additional streetscape features, having a public plaza, or having some kind of artistic feature. And of course, we have a big scoring for, you can get a lot of points for affordable housing. So, and then our final category is having a diverse and local team. So we give points if both the developer and the general contractor are local and or have a minority or woman-owned business. So that's the matrix. Any questions on that? And I apologize for my technical difficulties. Okay. So, back to the presentation. So how you apply for this, you need to come in and have a pre-application meeting with us. Please review the MRA plan and make sure that you've got a project that meets the goals in there. You complete the application. We have a hearing by the ADC. We have a hearing by the city council, and then we can execute the lease document and transfer title. I would say plan on about 5 months from when you submit the application to final approval by city council. You do have to apply before you submit for building permit. You must, when the city council, after the city council approves it, you have 3 years to execute the lease documents. So there's a little bit of a timing issue that's, a little bit beyond the scope of this. We can talk about that with you in the pre-application meeting, but we want you to be able to get your tax abatement approval, know you have that before you go under construction or, even before you submit your building permit. But there is a time limit on being able to build the project. There are fees. The fees used to be about $50,000. So we're really proud to be able to reduce that down to what you see here. And we have a difference between projects that cost less than 6 million or projects that have a total cost of 6 million or more. And then you have a fee that's due when you submit your application. You have a fee that's due when the lease is executed. And then during the time period of your abatement, you have a 10% of that abatement value comes back as a sort of fee in lieu to the MRA agency. So in effect, it's really only a 90% abatement of property taxes. So moving on, we also frequently go out for competitive grants and loans. And I can't really take questions on this right now, but I can explain a few things to you. We just recently, last week, launched the third round of this. This is the third year that we've done this for $3 million. Projects have to be in the downtown greater area, which is the area with a red line here. And they also have to be within an MR area. You have to be doing 50 units of housing. You have to have site control. We don't fund pre-development expenses. We would only contribute our funding at closing or later. Those terms would be negotiated. We will only finance up to 20% of the total development costs. It's up to you to tell us how you want to structure it. Is it a loan? Is it an equity? Is it grant? This can also be stacked with our tax abatement program. You do have to use that same community benefits matrix, and you have to score at least 75 points. But it's a this is a competitive application. So the higher you can score on that, the more competitive it will be. Again, this is open right now. The only time that we can take questions on this is in the context of the pre-proposal meeting that's scheduled for November 30th, or written. So this is a great opportunity for projects. We've done this 3 times. Projects that we funded include Jay Remby's project in downtown, the Downtowner, which is going to add at least 200 units of housing, Mark Baker's project, the 15-unit convent conversion, an Imperial Inn project, which is a renovation of that project into sort of more of a boutique hotel and micro units. So we've funded several projects through this program. We also occasionally go out for when we have land. So this would be, we acquire land, we deal with some of the environmental remediation issues, we may demolish structures that are on there, and then we can put it out for RFP. The price is negotiable. It's based on the fair value. So this is one of the unique powers of MRA. Normally government has to sell things for market value. We can sell it for fair value, which considers the fact that the market is not functioning in that area because of its blighted conditions. And we are asking for things that are not sort of market achievable. And so we can consider that in the price. We frequently end up donating the land in our transactions. Right now, I don't have any land, but this is something that we are working on with some key acquisitions. We also just this week announced our storefront grant program. This is this is the second round. We did the first round last year. We awarded $500,000 to 15 businesses absorbing 40,000 square feet of office space. Round 2 is open. We have $750,000 available. You have to be in the downtown Metropolitan Redevelopment area. It has to be a storefront space. It has to be ground level space. And our amounts are larger. They're between $50,000 and $250,000, depending on the size of the space that's being absorbed. The tenant is the applicant in this scenario, and they need to be moving into a space that's at least 2,000 square feet. And the business needs to be established. And there's some criteria in that grant materials about how long they've been in business and how many employees they have. We got a lot of startup businesses in our first round, and we think we're really happy to be able to partner with those, but we want to sort of balance the ecosystem out downtown and get some more established businesses and also try to absorb some of the more larger vacant spaces. We do have a property database on our website, which includes some of the spaces that have not typically been on the market and includes some contact information to those owners. And then the final thing I'm going to touch on is the rail trail. And when we talk about MRAs—
Karen, really quickly, there's one question in the chat.
Okay. Let's see. Will you offer this type of grant in the West Central MRA? So our funding for those types of grant programs are directed by council. Last year, as part of sort of the downtown plan, they funded several programs to try to revitalize downtown Albuquerque, and that was one of them. So right now I do not have funding directed by council to offer this grant program in West Central, but we hope to someday. So the next project that we have, and this is really an MRA project, I just put it out there because it's really transformative. We want to see, we believe that this will help incentivize development all through the downtown area. And this is the Rail Trail project. It follows the rail line through downtown, through Wells Park, over to Sawmill. It connects all of our best tourist attractions and amenities for residents. We believe that this could, incentivize up to $1 billion of development along the trail. So if you're looking for sites, something along this trail, you will have a great amenity that urban dwellers are looking for these days. So we currently have $35 million to bring this project into fruition, and we're moving into design, and we're really excited about it. It will be a multimodal bike and pedestrian path that provides linkages across the rail track, and then just also provides a circulation through the best amenities that we have in downtown Albuquerque. So with that, on this presentation, which we'll post, I do have some links here that are super helpful. A link to our website. Maybe Sarah, you can just put that in the chat as well as the city's GIS mapping. And we also have our contact information here. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen. Pause to see if there's any questions before we give it over to Dean. All right, Dean, the floor is yours.
Dean, you are on mute.
I apologize for that. So good morning, everybody. Glad to have you here. As Karen stated at the beginning of the presentation, I and my area that I work in is probably the last stop before occupying these residential and metropolitan development sites. So I am the Assistant Building Safety Manager. We are the regulation or the jurisdiction for building permits. We do have a very quick motto that we like to follow, and it's help us to help you. So we're very proactive up front with pre-designs, with questions up front, what's required. Now, when you get to our area for building permits, you've pretty much gone through all the other processes of the allowances and where you're going to work. So we're just the final construction phase of it. Things that we offer with building safety is electronic plan review, electronic administrative programs. So it can be done out of state, out of city, all online. It's a really great situation. We do recommend, not necessarily require, but recommend what we consider our pre-design meetings. These are maybe the developers, architects coming in at about a 30% design, and we'll go through it and see if there's any major items that could be hiccups for the completion of the building permit process. We also offer at 70 to 75%. Another one that we look at kind of the final fine tuning of plans and submissions before they come to us for permitting. These are all free meetings. They are set up through us, and we can have different sections available because we are a one-stop shop. So when permits come into us, it goes to all sections that need to review building permit plan. This is an example of fire marshal, solid waste, zoning, traffic, hydrology, the building trades, and mechanical, electrical, and plumbing trades. Once the building permit is approved, then it will go through some of the items Karen was discussing about impact fees. And so that is brought in after the actual permit. And then the completion, you would do your building permit itself and the fees for that and start your construction. Our administrative programs does not only the permit and application process, but also the inspections and final completing of the permits. The last thing that's issued is the certificate of occupancy. And that's kind of the golden Willy Wonka ticket that you can occupy the space. So we do provide all that. That is part of our jurisdiction. I would like to offer out our general email address, which is building safety applications with an S at cabq.gov. Any general questions can come in there and would get routed to the various sections that would need to respond to you. The last thing really that I have is the only wrong question to us is the one that's not asked. So we do have a very big open door policy, and we enjoy having to come in and know what's going to be happening. We do see a lot of different construction methods. I've seen everything from apartment complexes on parking structures to some of the new fabs now that we have had one apartment section in the city that was done with the shipping containers. So we are very innovative and look at everything with an open mind. And as far as that, I'll leave it to questions at this time for mine.
Thank you, Dean. I think the other thing you, I don't think you touched on was the expediting permit option that folks have.
Yes, we do have a expedited plan review process. Our normal review process for a cycle is 2 to 3 weeks. That's just a standard review process. We have an expedited service that is called Fast Tracks. And in that, your permit fees are triple or a minimum of $1,000. What this gives you is a service that we will have the review cycle completed in 7 days.
Awesome. So I think the basic message that we want to give folks is that we have a housing shortage. We desperately need more housing in our community, and we are here to work with you all as local developers, as developers maybe looking to move into our community, and we are all here to be a resource to you to help you in whatever way we can. And I'll just open it up generally for any last remaining questions for any of us.
So Karen, I did see a message from Frederick asking about the SIPS panels. I am very familiar with these. No, there is no any special other than normal process. All apartment complexes and townhome projects are a commercial permit, so it would require architectural and engineering stamps. But the IBC codebook does have a prescriptive allowance for those, and we are very familiar with it. And in that, not just SIPs, but the insulated concrete forms is another new standard that's coming through.
Super. I got a message about the rail yard technology design. So we have not finalized the design of it. It's in design right now, and we're looking at all kinds of new technologies, a lot of things around safety, around implementing smart technologies to improve safety along the trail, to improve, we're working really closely with the IT department. If that's what that question is in reference to, they're a part of our core team in ensuring we've got the best new technology on that core. Any last questions?
There's one final question from Michelle. Do you see it?
Oh yeah, I do see it. How the MRA agency is set up and how it lets you deploy for the community zone. So I know that there's several communities from throughout the state who've joined us, perhaps just to see what types of programs we have. So, I think there have been a lot of MR plans that have been approved through the state's Main Street programs. And we generally get our resources from the city council. They allocate general funds to us. However, we are working on a new state policy to create an enhanced tax increment tool that would allow Metropolitan Redevelopment Agencies, districts to collect both property tax increment and GRT for the entire district. And so this would create a meaningful revenue source to implement metropolitan redevelopment. And I know some of you we have all of your emails, and I will probably be reaching out to those of you in other communities in the next few days about that policy and about how you can help support us. It's something we're going to need a statewide lift on in the next legislative session. So I think that we've been lucky in the city of Albuquerque to have the support from our city council to just sort of directly allocate funding to us through their annual budget cycle. But in order to really do redevelopment in a meaningful way, we need to have a revenue source dedicated for redevelopment. So I'll be in touch with all of you. And with that, I just want to thank you all, and please reach out to us if there's any questions. We'll be posting this recording and the presentation online, and we look forward to working with you on your projects in the future.